how do you balance the tension of like, oh, I want to be creative, but I want to lead people well, or on the other side of like, I want to lead people really well, so I don't want to be creative at all. Like, where does that balance come in for you? And I know you also record albums and you make other things. Like, what's the relationship between being an artist and then being like a good worship leader?
I think there's a time and place for everything. And I think it's one of those things that when an artist does not have outlets for all the expressions that they need, they end up in the 1 minute they're given something, try to fit everything into it. Everything that they've wanted to express that's repressed. And I think we need to give ourselves outlets, a lot of outlets for the different kind of music we want to make, the different things we want to say, the different things we want to write. Because ultimately art is a public service. It's meant to serve the public. It's meant to serve people. And I think that, painters try to paint themselves out of things and into things. We try to write ourselves out of things and into things. We try to sing ourselves out of things and into things. And no matter how you look at it, our egos are going to get involved because we're human beings with egos and limitations. And so I think as far as what worship to me, like I used to be concerned with not being holy enough to lead worship, right? Like, I had such a shame base going on that I was like, I'm unworthy, all this other stuff. And lately, even when those thoughts do come back around, it's like an old tape, because what my view now has changed to I'm bringing all of it with me and I'm giving it to God. It's an act of giving it to God. That let's just start with the baseline of honesty. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I say it all out loud. It means that I choose something like the psalmist. To me, the psalmist really embodied this, where he said everything out loud, and at the end he directed his soul towards the goodness of God, right? And I'll never forget when I was in a deep depressive season a few years ago. I was just so despairing, and I felt like that's all I had to bring, which it really was. I was exhausted. And I remember having this internal dialogue with Jesus being like, man, I'd really like to bring you something better. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Your despair is precious to me. The fact that you trust me with your despair is precious to me. That is worship. So if we're talking about worship, because you can't have worship without love, right? You can't have worship without we're not talking about a narcissist, some sort of Gandalf in the sky that just needs worship in order to be God. This is not Jesus, right? Jesus is the friend who bears all and who loves unto death people that put him there, right? If we're talking about worshiping Jesus, it looks like learning what the way of Jesus is and studying the nature of Jesus and following Jesus and talking with Jesus and walking with Jesus and admitting things and saying things out loud and being honest and having these quiet moments off stage so that we have a backbone when we go on stage and when we're leading a group of people and we are trusted with 20 minutes of their time. And even if I don't say it out loud in a worship set, if I don't talk about the story, so when I sit down at the piano and play, there's an authority of a story that I've been in with the Christ for however many months, years, whatever that looks like. So I think a lot of times as artists, we get stuck in the fact that we have to, again, say everything all at once in order to be honest. I think that's also that's where we can kind of get stuck, is that like, I have to express everything all at this one time because I'm never going to have another moment like this, which is a very scarce way of looking at life. If we are able to back off just a little bit and look at every dynamic and every group of people that we're put in front of, like there's a public service that we're part of. And I want to meet the people as much as I can where they're at and serve them with music, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?